The essential contact motion on the one-handed backhand is something we call scapular retraction, or Scap retraction for short. It is this motion. This motion. I'll show it to you from the back. So what this motion is the big strong muscles of the upper back, the rhomboids, the traps, pulling the shoulder blades together. This is a very strong motion, similar to the pressing motions that we use on the forehead and the overhead. The pulling motion that we use on the one-handed backhand is a very strong motion. These are very strong muscles, very easy to train with something like the weighted pull-up. So those are the muscles you need to use. So how do you use them? Well, just like on every other stroke, you have to find the contact point that allows you to pull. And if you're in the wrong spot, you're not going to be able to pull. So where is the pull slot? Not here. And this is a big issue I see on the one-handed backhand. From this body position, you really can't pull. The pull slot on the one-hander is out here. Now that's the start of the hitting zone, because that is the start of the place where I have the strength to pull using my upper back. So the pull slot is no, and this is probably like at the very earliest. If I have to pull from here, maybe I can. Really, it's here, and then I'm through the target from there. So just like with the forehand, where we have to set up our swing so that this adduction will go through the ball in the direction we want, if I'm hitting at the camera, I have to set up my pull slot so I can pull on a vector straight through towards the camera. Now I'm pretending to hit this way, and again, my pull slot, if I try to pull from here, I can't do it. So what happens when you catch the ball late? Well, first of all, one of the reasons the one-hander is difficult is, unlike the forehand, where you can get away with shots like this, you know, you'll see Lorenzo Musetti hit winners like this all the time. It doesn't really work on the backhand because you can't really pull with your upper back from here. So you have two options. One is to pull with the weaker muscles on the side of your arm here, the triceps, maybe the shoulder, the deltoid. That doesn't really work. I mean, you can do it in an emergency. The key here is not to try to hit hard and just try to block the ball if you're forced to pull from your stomach area. Because if you try to hit the ball hard from here, you're going to hurt yourself and the shot's not going to be good. But really what you want to do is pull with your upper back regardless. So even if you catch the ball late, just pull with your upper back anyway and do one of these kind of bunt shots that you'll see a lot of good players doing when they do things like return serve. So that's real quick if you're late, but let's talk about being on time, which is where we want to be, which is out in the pull slot when we pull so we can actually drive through the shot. So those are the first two really critical parts of the one-handed backhand. Number one, we are pulling with the strong muscles of the upper back. That's the fundamental contact motion. Number two, the slot that we pull from is out here so that we actually have the strength to pull, and that pull goes back to front. If we pull too late, just like on the forehand, if we pull too late, that pull is going to go sideways. And if we pull too early, we're not really going to be able to pull in a way that makes the racket go to the other side of the court with velocity. So how do you find this? Well, I made a video about this. You can go, you can do this on the wall, but the key to finding this is you set up where you think your pull slot is, and you start pulling, and you see, can I generate force from that position? And if I can, that's the middle of my contact zone. And if I can't, I move my body around until I can feel a generating force. And again, it's the big, strong muscles of the upper back that you want to feel through the contact zone on the one-hander. These are going to give you power and control, and what they're going to allow you to do is drive through the ball with pace, because you're going to be able to accelerate the racket all the way through towards contact. It's not going to slow down until after in the follow-through. The pull works best as a two-handed motion. So just like on the forehand, we don't want to swing like this. Every swing, we use our torso and our offhand to attack the ball with both. On the one-hander, we're always attacking the ball with two hands. We're always getting to a two-handed pull. So we're always pulling with two hands. You don't want to pull with one hand, again, just like on the forehand, this is just a much less efficient swing, and you're very likely going to rotate farther than you want and shank the ball because of it. So we're always pulling with two hands. So we're pulling with our upper back, we're pulling from the right pull slot, and we're pulling with two hands. Let me show you just a couple quick demonstrations of just that final pulling action. I'll show it from the back first, and I'll show it from the side. Okay, so those are the fundamentals. Now let's talk grip and wrist. Unfortunately, this is pretty counterintuitive and it trips a lot of people up. So on the one-hander, we can't allow our wrist to just freely break the way it wants to. Now, on the forehand, we can. And this is one of the things that's really nice about the way the forehand works is when I go here and I press through here and I adduct my shoulder, my wrist naturally, it unwinds a little through the contact zone, but it doesn't fully break until the follow through. And so obviously trying to hit the ball through this part of the swing would be impossible, but the part of the swing that hits the ball when you just allow your wrist to do whatever it wants to do on the forehand, the part of your swing that hits the ball is the part where the string angle stays reasonably consistent. It's not what happens on the one-hander. If I fully relax my hand and I let my wrist just naively break as I pull, it wants to break here. And that is right through the hitting zone, which is a problem. If you allow your wrist to break like this through the hitting zone, you cannot hit a fault-tolerant shot because there isn't that much time in this hitting zone where the racket has the correct string angle. So what do you have to do? Well, unfortunately, you can't keep your hand quite as loose. Now, as you get better and better, you'll want your hand looser and looser in your preparation, but through your hitting zone, you are going to have to use at least a little bit of forearm tension to prevent this. The only rotation we can have is rotation that doesn't drastically affect the string angle. This. So we can have rotation in this plane, not in this plane. From the side, that's this plane is fine, this plane is not fine. So you can allow your forearm to whip across, and as your backhand gets better and better, you're going to whip this way more and more. But this, unlike the forehand, where I can let my wrist break through the contact, because through the contact, it'll be here. On the backhand, if I let my wrist break through the contact, it'll be here, and it won't work. So you must resist that and not let your wrist break the way it naturally is. That's different from the forehand. You don't need to resist it on the forehand. On the forehand, if you're doing it right, your wrist is going to fully break after the swing, and so it won't affect your contact. Your wrist is going to open up, 10, 15 degrees through contact, and your string angle will be fine. Backhand, if you just let it rip and you don't worry about it at all, it will almost certainly break, 100 degrees through contact. So what do I recommend to practice this? I recommend you actually don't start with the swings you see on the tour. I recommend you start with this. Instead of preparing here, you prepare here. So prepare with the racket head down, go to the pull slot, pull. Go to the pull slot, pull. And I'm going to keep this angle the entire time. Now, you don't see the racket flicking around my shoulder. You don't see a whole bunch of anything happening. Why? It's not as dynamic of a swing. What this swing will let you do is, it'll let you learn what the contact orientation feels like and what it feels like to resist that. So again, even when you're pulling from the right slot, this is different than the forehand. The forehand, if you're pressing from the right slot, your hand will probably do what it's supposed to do if you're pressing from the right slot. On the backhand, if you're pulling from the right slot, you can still lose complete control of your wrist and lose complete control of the shot. So in order to have control of the shot and control of the wrist and control of the rotation, I recommend you start here. And you'll see this actually on serve returns from guys with good one-handers. They won't cock the racket on serve returns. They'll just do this kind of block shot. So this is not even a bad shot. It's just not nearly as dynamic as the one we're going to use eventually. But I want you to start here, and here, and pull, and then that's gonna let you feel the wrist position. And then as you start to get better, you're gonna slowly go looser in the preparation, and you're gonna rotate the racket head this way, right? So as you feel a little better, maybe you prepare here, you start feeling better, and then once you're really seeing the ball well, you know, as much as you feel comfortable with your own wrist, you cock that racket before, and that's gonna give you extra velocity and whip through that pull slot, and that whip is going like this as the hand moves towards the target. So we're here, and now see how my forearm's rotating around, and so my string angle is staying relatively the same, and that lets me hit a real shot rather than allowing my wrist to totally break. The grip that's needed to make this work is this. We need a right angle between the forearm and the handle, and for most people, most comfortable is going to be the knuckles right on top of the racket, parallel to the racket. So I want to stress that this is a 90-degree angle. When most people volley and they use the continental grip for volleying, they have more of a 135-degree kind of slanted angle. Now you can hit a backhand with a continental grip, but not this continental grip. I have to move the hilt so that my knuckles are along the handle, parallel with the handle. If the knuckles are slanted offset from the handle, again, look, my wrist is not going to be able to do that rotation I just showed. It's going to break out this way. So we need this actually purely orthogonal direction here, perpendicular, so that my wrist can rotate this way. Now there's a range of acceptable grips here, but they all have this forearm interaction. The range is for how closed you want the racket face. So you can hit this with a continental, and when you're starting out, continental's totally fine. Use this one, see the ball, get the pull slot right, totally fine. As you want to start to get more spin, you're gonna wanna put your knuckles on top of the racket. We call this an Eastern backhand grip, bevel one here, top bevel on the racket, knuckles again parallel to the handle. That's what you're gonna wanna use. That is the most common one-handed backhand grip. Personally, and you might have seen my backhand look a little weird demonstrating in this video because I use more of an Eastern grip. So here's the top grip. I actually turn my racket down a little more than that. And so that's why my hand is gonna look slightly different than your hand will look as it comes through if you're using a more standard grip. I just do that because I like the way it feels, and I play with the same side of the racket, forehand and backhand. So I use a little bit more of an extreme one-hander grip to make it closer to my forehand. How much you want to close your racket face is personal preference, but the thing that's a really fundamental, necessary item of the backhand is that this angle is such that you can do this forearm rotation. If you use a non-perpendicular angle, you're gonna, even if you're doing it right, your wrist is gonna break, you're not gonna be able to control it. And so that's really key. The index knuckle is not enough to reference your grip. You need the angle of the handle in your hand. You need to pay attention to that, and it has to be like this. And that, combined with learning to feel what this position feels like and how to resist this wrist break, will get you a fault-tolerant contact zone through the pulling zone with topspin. Okay, so let's just go through and summarize everything. Number one, scap retraction. That is the essential contact motion. Big, strong muscles of the upper back pull together. That's how you drive the racket on this stroke. You have to find the right pull slot. It's not here. You can't really pull from here. You want to pull from here, and then you'll be able to pull back to front along many different vectors, back to front, using the upper back. Okay, number three, it's a two-handed pull. It's a two-handed pull, not a one-handed pull, so I'm not going to swing like that. I'm going to pull with two hands. With the two-handed pull also, you're going to feel comfortable using your left hand to help the racket into the pull slot. Instead of just taking the left hand off, coming to the pull slot and pulling, you're going to feel more comfortable two-handed frontwards motion at first, split somewhere around here, and then pull. Number four is the wrist. We can't let it break. It's not like the forehand where we can just let it do what it wants. We have to control the wrist to prevent it from breaking like this and force it to go around here instead. In order to do this, I recommend you start here. Boom, 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 boom. Find that contact motion, find that pull slot, and then as you feel more comfortable, loosen up the hand in the preparation and cock the racket more and more until you get to the level you're comfortable of. And then the last thing is the grip. You need this orthogonality here. You have to have this. If you have a slant like this, the wrist and the forearm are just not going to create the kind of fault-tolerant rotation that we need. This is volitional. You can use any sort of closed or open string angle that you want, whatever feels comfortable for you. But this versus this, you must do this. And that's really the one-hander. The last thing I'll say is if you're ever losing this, you go on a wall, you find contact, you pull, and you see if you can pull. And that's how you find your contact. You know, a lot of people struggle with high one-handers. The truth is, if your upper back is strong, if you're training on the row or training on the weighted pull-up, you can take a one-hander up here and you can rip it. You just have to find the right pull slot. If you have to pull from here, you can't do anything. I would have to pull with these super weak muscles. It's impossible. But if I find the right pull slot, which is out here, then you can just rip it.